I guess what I love is that Torello is this sort of community hub. We have people who supply us with food who have become friends, and so we have this wonderful relationship with the people who supply us, and then we can pass that joy on to our customers.
This is The Producers. I'm Dani Valent. Sophie O'Neil grew up on a farm in New South Wales, but she didn't quite tap into food as a passion and a career until a dispiriting experience in food marketing led to a change. She's now an owner of Torello Farm, a mixed business and farm gate on Victoria's Mornington Peninsula. Founded in 2016, Torello not only sells Sophie's own beef and lamb, but also curates other local produce for residents, visitors and restaurants in a bountiful business that creates connection and brings nourishment and joy.
My name is Sophie O'Neil and I'm one of the owners of Torello Farm on the Mornington Peninsula. So Torello Farm is a farm gate in Dramana at the bottom of White Hill Road, on the road that leads up to Red Hill for those people who know the Mornington Peninsula. And we sell local produce. So some people liken us to a bit of a farmer's market, but obviously we don't have the farmers on site. So we sell produce from about 70 different farms across the Mornington Peninsula, including our family's own farm, which is in Toorong, where we grow belted Galloway beef and Dorset Down lamb.
Sophie grew up on a mixed farm, but food only clicked for her when curious eating sent her on a journey of discovery.
I grew up in country New South Wales. I grew up in between Forbes and Eugara, which both have been put on the map recently with those horrible floods. So it was a mixed farm. We had cattle, sheep, and then grew some crops. To be honest, I wasn't a super interested kid as in farming. I think for me, my interest in food and food production has come from being a really curious eater, and then I obviously got involved in marketing and specifically food marketing and a little bit of food writing, and I think that kind of, so now I wouldn't call myself a farmer. I felt like a little bit like, oh, should I be on this podcast? Because I'm a connector of producers, I suppose.
Once Sophie landed on food, she delved into many different parts of the supply chain. She's worked with farmers markets, pig farming, a butcher shop, sheep and cattle production, and eventually the lively ecosystem that is Torello Farm, opened with her extended family.
I started my kind of food journey at greengrocer.com back in the late 90s, where I was doing the marketing. I was working in the marketing team there. And then, I moved down to Victoria and started up a farmers market, and that was just amazing. It really threw me into the local food scene in Victoria, and I met some amazing people who inspired me and, just really anchored me in this life, I suppose. And so I started a farmers market, and Mark and I also started up a free-range pork business, and we bought a butcher shop in Nearham South and processed, rare breed, beautiful pork that we sold at farmers markets and into some local restaurants and stuff like that. And then we decided we started having kids and decided we needed to be closer to family. So we moved to the Mornington Peninsula and we stopped growing the pigs and started growing belted Galloways and Dorset Down lambs. At the time when we were growing pigs, we worked with an amazing woman called Ethel Stevenson who grew English Leicesters. She's no longer alive, but she was such an advocate for heritage breeds, and really we learnt so much from her. And so we continued growing these sheep and cattle, and Mark and his family had fruit shops, and Mark had also had in his life a providore business supplying restaurants, and the opportunity just came up with Torello to buy it, and I guess Mark and I just combined all of the experience that we had, along with his brothers and their partners' experience, and we just had a crack and started up Torello. And it's a really joyful business. I feel really proud of sort of the community nature of the business. Obviously we service the local community, but we also get visitors to the peninsula it's a popular tourist region, and that kind of helps our business because we have different types of customers coming throughout a 7-day week. And then I think for me, the real joy is that we have all these beautiful farmers growing an eclectic range of produce that supply us. And I think our existence really is helping incubate other farmers. I'll be at a basketball game with my kids or something, and someone will come up to me and say, hey, we've got, a couple of acres. What do you think we could grow that we could supply you? And I think, that's just so cool because we don't want land just sitting there not being used to grow food. And I think, that's something that I feel really passionate about, and I think there's a real opportunity on the Mornington Peninsula in my next chapter to really try and incubate more small farmers and make land available to them. There's still lots of gaps. Some of them, like peach, stone fruit, there's not a lot of stone fruit being grown on the peninsula, but there might be a really good reason for that. We haven't had a huge amount of success, although we've got one of our regular orchardists who supplies us apples in Toorong. He grows some peaches, and we managed to sell his fruit this season, which was great. There's lots of opportunities.
Bounty from around 70 local producers can be found at Torello, along with the beef and lamb from Sophie's own farm. Key to the process of selling whole animals is educating customers about different cuts and value adding with take-home pies, lasagnas, stocks and ragouts.
When we first started Torello, we were still working with Alan and Lizette, and they were just fantastic and really, really mentored us about how to move like a whole animal. That's evolved. We now operate on our own, but we sell a whole carcass of beef and several lambs. We put that through the shop each week. And the challenge, it's wonderful in one sense because people are getting to see a whole animal, but that it's challenging in other ways because, for example, in the middle of summer, no one's buying roasts. So we have then added another arm to our business, which is we've registered the kitchen on the house on site, and we value add a lot of the beef that isn't going to move depending on the season. So at the moment we're using brisket in a pulled beef dish. We're making lots of lasagnas. We do lots of delicious ragouts and bone broths and all sorts of things just to really make sure we use the whole animal. And interestingly, those sort of take-home meals have become a really important part of our business. They showcase our beautiful beef and lamb, and they also help us be viable.
Sophie and Mark's belted Galloway beef is entirely grass-fed and grown out to 2 or 3 years. Changing mindsets around whole animal eating has been a big part of making beef work for them. Offering Denver steak, Merlot steak, Pope's eye and other lesser-known cuts is all part of making farming ethical and viable.
So our beef is, if I use our beef as an example, our beef is grown, it's 100% grass-fed. We process animals when they're about 2.5 to 3 years old, and then we hang them for at least kind of 2.5 to 3 weeks. So that's a more expensive product than yearling beef. But so there's been we've had to really dig in and educate our customers about why our beef is more expensive, because it just costs more to produce. But it's got a really incredible intramuscular fat and full beef flavour that require you only need a little bit to kind of and a little bit goes a long way. And I've found that we've got cuts in the shop like Pope's eye or Denver steak or Merlot steak, and we have to work quite hard at educating people. But once they get their head around it, they really have embraced it, and it's a lovely. I think we've changed the mindset of how people purchase their protein, and that's really exciting. So selling a whole animal requires. We've had to, like I said, we've had to work really hard at educating our customers. So we work with a fantastic local recipe developer and food stylist called Fiona Hammond, and Fee's worked with us pretty much since we opened. So she's been with us for a long time, and she does a recipe every week. So if I was talking to our butcher and I was doing some research once and said, oh, look, I think there's a really nice cut that you can find in the shin. It's a little muscle, and called Merlot, and I said, let's try and get it. So he now cuts that out for us, and then I'd give that product to Fee, and I'd say, Fee, can you develop a recipe for it? Teach people about how to cook this secondary steak, cut it against the grain, yada yada. So we recipes are really key for our kind of marketing of the beef, but also we have like QR codes now in the shop where we might say, if you don't know what this cut is, hit the QR code, and then we provide that information. And people, you have. I love it when you convert an I Feel It customer to a Denver customer. It's very thrilling.
There's lamb, and then there's Dorset Downs lamb. Sophie explains what's special about their sheep.
We learnt about Dorset Downs. Mark and I went to a rare breeds trust lunch, a long time ago. And the chef was Alan Harding, who has since become a really good friend of ours. And he cooked Dorset Down lamb, which we knew nothing about. And then Ethel Stevenson, who we were working with at farmers markets and selling her English Leicester lamb alongside our free-range pork, she rang us up one day really excited and said, there's a flock of lambs in South Australia that are about to go to the sale yards, and it's Dorset Down, and we need to preserve that breed, and there's only a small pocket of them around. Do you think you could take it? And Mark and I went, yeah, great. So we organised a truck to deliver a flock of Dorset Down ewes to us, and we've now since worked with one of the main breeders of Dorset Downs, Colin and Margaret Chapman, and they grow. So they've helped us kind of increase our genetics and grow more. And so, we grow them purely for meat. We put them through the farm gate, and it sells really, really well. And more recently, we've started to be approached with, obviously we can't produce lamb all year round. So more recently we've been approached for a few other small Peninsula farmers who's like, would you be interested in selling our small flock? And that's working really well. Dorset Downs, again, slow growing, and they can, you have to be careful not to let them get too big and fat, but they're rich and delicious and, beautiful. I mean, shoulders are beautiful, slow cooked, but equally their chops are just, fantastic, or, a rolled loin is just beautiful. I was up in New South Wales. My dad's a farmer. I grew up on a farm in Forbes, and I'd taken him some lamb, and he rang me the other night and he goes, I've just eaten that lamb. It's unbelievable. So I thought that was pretty good from a guy who's kind of, killed his own lamb all his life.
One of the most satisfying aspects of having land is being able to craft its purpose. Sophie has watched with joy as the trio from Five Tails have begun growing delicious produce on Torello Farm.
We farmed ourselves at Torello for a few. We bought the property in 2016 and we grew for quite a few years ourselves. And then an opportunity came along with Mikey and Kez and Jess from Five Tails Farm, and they were looking for a place to start their own business. And so we've made land available for them, which is fantastic. And they are doing a wonderful job. They grow organically. We sell a lot of their produce in our shop, so they grow, at the moment, that would be like zucchinis or beans. They grow wonderful young shoots and salad greens and spinach and carrots and garlic and beautiful lettuces. They source a lot of their seed from Transition Farm, which is another wonderful grower down here, and we sell Transition Farm seeds in the shop. But that relationship is just so great, because I feel like we're making land available for them and they're selling through us. They also sell elsewhere. They sell in other retail outlets, and they also sell in restaurants. And we still have land available here at Torello, and so I'd love to, in the future be able to maybe make land available for some other young farmers. So that's hopefully something that might play out in the years to come.
One of the hardest questions a person could ask Sophie O'Neil is what a typical day looks like. As a farmer, wholesaler, retailer, value adder, communicator and all-round connector, every day is different and enriching. Yeah, so a day for me would be, so I come into the farm gate. Today I
so we do a great collaboration with a fantastic pie maker on the peninsula called Johnny Ripe, and they will turn, again, because you're thinking that I've got to get rid of a whole carcass. So how to, what am I doing with, enormous amounts of chuck or whatever? And so we work with a local pie producer, and I'll be like, okay, what pie are we going to do this week? Looking at that. Then it might be working with one of the team and looking at our bread sales. We are blessed to have Jason Cotter and Emma Hick in Toorong who grow heritage wheat, and they bake amazing bread, and so do a couple of other bakeries use their flour, and so we sell their bread. And so it's like, it's just always tweaking our offering, making sure that it's hitting the right mark, and then seeking opportunities. That's probably what thrills me the most. I can talk about the boring stuff, but the stuff that really thrills me is just, hey, there's a new producer that's come on board and they've got a heap of, blood plums. Okay, so we probably won't move that much in the farm gate. So what can we do in the kitchen with that? Or, we've just launched a wholesale side to our business. So can we think of a restaurant that might be interested in that product? And that's probably the really exciting stuff. Mixed in with Instagram and all the, day-to-day things. I feel like when you walk into into Torello, we do have a philosophy of what you can see is sort of what the local seasons provided you. So throw away your shopping list and let Mother Nature guide you. And it's really true. So any given day can be quite different. So some, we might have a farmer drop off some beautiful plums at this time of year, or some really early new season apples might have just started. So they'll come and then they'll go, or I'm always getting in trouble from the staff because I can't put everything on Instagram, because sometimes it's a really small amount of stuff that's just been dropped off. We've got some really cool eggplants that are being grown by a guy in Rosebud at the moment that are in the shop, or, we also have a kind of a standard amount of line, because there's some big market gardeners on the peninsula that we source, say potatoes or Dutch carrots or spring onions or celery from. So there's some things that will be quite, will be quite mainstream and familiar, but then there's lots of little eclectic things. Beautiful nashies we're getting out of Red Hill at the moment.
People get into farming for all kinds of reasons. Above all else, Sophie has been driven by her curiosity. What are we eating? Is it ethical? Might there be something better?
Being a curious eater, I think we, if I think about why we got into free-range pork, Mark's family always made salami, and one day he was like, I just don't think we're using the best pork that we possibly could. And so that led us to talking to Christine Ross, who was growing large black pigs, and we went, oh, this is so much better. And then, you suddenly go, wait a minute, this is really much better. So what about the beef I'm eating? It could be so much better. And then, you go travelling and you go to the UK and you look at the beef that's being, I remember being at the Borough Market and looking at the beef there and going, why is your beef so different to what I can see, in my life in Australia at the time? And I think that just that curiosity has always made me strive to sort of firstly put better food on my own table, but also now it's about, sort of the ethics around it as well, and why we should be really, conscious of what we're eating and making sure that, we're looking after, the producer of, supporting the producer that we're who's grown the food that we're eating. I think one of the things I've really noticed about Torello is that we're really in an amazing location. We have, we're only an hour from Melbourne, so we have access to those markets. Like I said, weekends can be really busy with a very different clientele to what we see during the week, but we're really beautifully supported by a very discerning crowd of locals that thankfully to COVID that really harnessed that those customers for us, and people who care about their food, who want to support the community of growers around them. I worry that, I think about, could you put Torello in a different place? And I'm not sure. And I think that's the challenge for some small growers, in more remote areas, is how they find those markets, particularly if it's a really perishable product. There's some incredibly clever small producers out there that are doing wonderful things and getting around that. But I think that that's probably one of the bigger challenges for small producers, is just finding that right market and then getting the distribution.
Every day is different. Every day is busy. What is it that Sophie O'Neil loves about what she does?
I guess what I love is that Torello is this sort of community hub, and we have people who supply us with food who have become friends, like the team at Yoki Doki Eggs, who grow amazing pasteurised eggs up in Main Ridge, have become really good friends of ours. They've been supplying us for years, since they began. And so we have this wonderful relationship with the people who supply us, and then we can pass that joy on to our customers. I love that we have different farmers coming in talking to us about their stuff, and they're really, this ties me back to my farmers market roots of people, farmers really appreciating feedback, but also loving to hear that they've done an amazing job. That's just such a privilege to be able to work with these guys and help represent their product in a beautiful way. And then the people who buy it, whether that's a local restaurant or, just someone I know from basketball.
Torello Farm is a vibrant, practical showcase of local seasonal eating. Sophie's energy, passion and commitment is expressed in a joyful destination store that celebrates the Mornington Peninsula and embodies a connected style of farming, cooking, eating and enjoying. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Dani Valent. Stay tuned as we talk to some of Australia's best farmers, makers and growers. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or contact us via deepintheweeds.com.au.